Meek deals. Base hit to right field. Here comes Richardson. Here's the throw from Markakis. Richardson is safe. Derek Jeter ends his final game with a walk-off single.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Dog Days of Baseball podcast. And for the first time, since the very first episode, all three of us on camera at the same time. It is Grizz, it is Alphonse Stevens, and myself, Pete Rosado, the Dog Days of Baseball. And gentlemen, we are recording live in the middle of the third game, the final game of the first half of the Yankees Mets Subway Series. So let us start where we should start with the New York report. We are tied 1-1. Yankees took game 1, Mets took game 2. Currently, as we record, it is 2-1 Yankees going into the bottom of the second inning. What have you seen out of so far this first iteration of the Subway Series? Granted, it's not going to be a sweep like last year, thank God. But what are we seeing different about these two teams so far this year, matched up, two teams in first place in their respective divisions?
Who wants to field that one first?
I guess I'll go first. I gotta say, it honestly, I know there's been years where it's kind of felt. I think we can both agree on this. It felt kind of lopsided sometimes, right? It hasn't really felt like equal teams. You know, the Yankees are. Some people argue the Yankees have been the superior team. Some people argue the Mets have had their years up on the Yankees. But this particular year, maybe it's the feeling in New York right now, especially with the Knicks and everything going on there. These two teams really feel equal. This almost feels like a potential World Series, if you will, in maybe a year or two. I know we definitely thought we was going to get it last year, but you know how that turned out. But these two teams are very much equal. I feel like the Mets are. I'm not going to say they're a piece away from really giving the Yankees a scare. I think they can give the Yankees a scare right now as with the team that they have. The pitching is very much equal. The hitting is also as equal as well. I might give an advantage to the Yankees, not being biased. Giancarlo Stanton is also reported to be returning soon, probably end of June, July.
Oh.
Right. we'll see how that goes.
I'm so scared. I'm Scott Hall scared.
We'll see how that goes. Like I said, the pitching has been very much equal. We know Clark Schmidt is kind of getting back into the rotation with the injury to Stroman. Like I said, these two teams just feel equal. I love it. I love the competition. Who's the real team of New York? So, hey, bring it on. If this is the next 3 years, I'm good with it.
Fonz, I mean, Grizz saying both teams look equal, and you know, listen, I'm a Yankee fan, you know this, but outside of, you know, you have Stanton possibly coming back, LeMahieu just came off the DL, and then we have Luis Gil coming off the DL later this summer. I mean, I feel like the Mets have a little bit more in that tank. We have yet to see 2 or 3 of their top starters in their rotation yet to begin this season.
Well, I said this on the Metropolitan Report on Friday morning. I actually expected you guys to win this series 2-1, because you guys are not facing 2 of our best starters. You're not seeing Senga, you're not seeing Clay Holmes. And then the one game I predicted would go our way did go our way because Griffin Canning arguably has been our third best and the surprise of our rotation. I had no faith in Tyler McGill on Friday. And another thing that I predicted, so the Mets offense outside of 1, 2, 3 has been bad all year. If it's not Lindor, Soto, Alonso, I can't count on 4 through 9. But if the pitching is dominant, which it was yesterday, Canning only gave up 2 runs, the only 2 runs of the game. If our pitching is able to lock down, we would be in good shape. we saw Friday McGill didn't have good stuff. You guys scored 6 runs off of us, but then yesterday, you guys got shut down essentially. Especially Edwin Diaz with that great 9th inning. That visual of I'm not even to be
man.
The visual of Judge striking out to end the game made me really happy.
Every in the bottom of the ninth. That's what bottom of the ninths are made of, right?
Yeah.
Your best hitter, Aaron Judge, against the best pitcher, arguably on the Mets, in Edwin Diaz, in terms of just pure stuff. Like, that's what bottom of the ninth inning 1-run games are made to kind of look like.
And I think that's why I say that they're equal, because you have a situation like that comes up as a baseball fan or a baseball fanatic, you can't write a better story than that. There's nothing better than that.
And that pitch, if you look at it in slow motion, that fastball, and mind you, Edwin Diaz, there were concerns of his velocity. His fastball, before that pitch yesterday, his fastball hadn't gone over 95 miles an hour, and he dialed it up to 99 just for Aaron Judge.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually reposted it on my personal IG story, and that was probably one of the best high fastballs I've seen all season. And it was hittable. It wasn't like it wasn't hittable. At least to Aaron Judge, it's hittable. It's not like it wasn't hittable to Aaron Judge. He just couldn't keep up with it. So that's more so.
I think the location of the pitch is what surprised him.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, he was right in Aaron Judge's wheelhouse. If you really think about it, he was right there at the top of the zone, which Judge can smack out for 1.5 miles. But what's interesting is, when I see Edwin Diaz ramp up that velocity, it reminds me a lot of like what Aroldis Chapman likes to do when he just wants to show off a little bit. Chapman just rears back and it makes it effortless to like 103, and then just sits there and stares you down in the batter's box. Like, what are you going to do about it?
Because it's coming. It's coming. I can throw a 94, 95 mile per hour fastball, a 4-seamer, 2-seamer, whatever it is, but I can dial it up as well, and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. I think the one big thing that the Mets and the Yankees both have issues with, the Mets have a very good offense. I mean, I think while you haven't seen a lot of production from 4 through 9, I think they have a lot of players in that 4 through 9 spots that can be very productive, that we've seen be very productive. We're obviously seeing the bat of Brett Beatty come to life, Jeff McNeil finally waking up, Francisco Alvarez trying to find his stride. So we know the Mets do have a deep 1 through 9 lineup if everybody is hitting on all cylinders. The Yankees lineup has been really, really good this year. Obviously, you do want to find a little bit more protection, maybe a little bit more bench play, especially after losing what we've lost on the offensive side of the ball. But I think the biggest weakness for both teams is the middle relief core.
I agree.
It's that bullpen for both teams. Obviously, if you can get to Diaz, it's locked down. The Yankees, that back end of the bullpen has really been struggling. Obviously, Williams, not what we, necessarily the bill of goods that we thought we were going to get out of him. We haven't really found anybody else. Weaver's been hit and miss now. Leiter's been a little hit and miss now. Mm-hmm. So I think that relief core for the Yankees and that middle relief specifically for the Mets, the biggest weakness for both teams in New York.
So isn't it crazy that last year on here we said, me and Pete, we spoke about the middle relief being the problem for the Yankees. Have they really solved that problem?
No.
Not really. No, I don't think so either. I don't think they've solved that problem. They've solved the closing, maybe, but like you said, it's been
not
up
really.
And down. It's shaky. It's been up and down. It's had its days. It's not had its days. And now the Mets are in that same position where their closing is not as bad, but their middle relief is just as bad as the Yankees.
Well, our middle relief is actually pretty decent. We have a bullpen ERA of 2.8, which I think is pretty phenomenal. We have 3 solid middle relievers. That would be Max Kranick, that would be Reed Garrett, and that would be Huascar Brazoban. Everybody else in the pen minus Diaz, I don't trust. I don't trust Genesis Cabrera. We just went out and traded for a reliever from Arizona, Jose Castillo, who has a 11 ERA. So I don't know what we're thinking there, but we do need a lefty. I think Minter going down, Danny Young going down for the season is what really is really going to screw us. Wow, look at Aaron Judge with a sliding catch show off. But but no, our bullpen actually this year is better than in years past. I think this is the best bullpen we've had since Jerry's Familia was our closer. I'm going to go out and say so. But no, definitely.
Yeah, but Devin Williams. I mean, the Yankees were so willing to get rid of Clay Holmes, who now has emerged as the top of the line starter for the Mets, and we went out and got Devin Williams from the Milwaukee Brewers, multiple all-star closer. And the bill of goods that we've gotten on Devin Williams has not been the Devin Williams that I think the Yankees thought they were getting when they were traded for him.
I think Devin Williams, when he goes to sleep at night, he still sees Pete Alonso's face in his nightmares from last October.
Yeah, I can honestly say that the I'll put a nice ring to it. The Devin Williams project is not what we thought it would be going into this. I don't know if this was like, I'm thinking just management. I don't know if this was like, hey, if Luke Weaver, because he is on a club option, I believe, if Luke Weaver decides to leave next season, okay, we have Devin Williams. We're okay with that. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. I don't know what's going to happen towards the offseason. It's too early to tell. But I can humbly agree that the Devin Williams project has not been a total success for us just yet.
Well, you know what it could be, Grizz? You got to folks forget this. He came from a small market team.
That is
in
true.
Milwaukee, and pitching in Milwaukee and pitching in Yankee Stadium is two totally different atmospheres. If you fail in Milwaukee, there's not that much scrutiny. You fail in New York, they want your head on a stick.
That is true. I mean, let's go back a few weeks ago. Let's go back to the Yankees Giants game with Marcus Stroman in that horrible first inning. He had a horrendous first inning, the only inning he pitched, where the man gave up 3 home runs, I believe, a double. It was just horrible. So I agree with you. Pitching in New York for any big market team, coming from a small market team, it takes adjustments. It definitely takes adjustments, and especially pitching for New York, us being respective New York fan teams, we know, the New York Post, the Daily News, you turn to the back of it, whatever sport is on there, if it's baseball, they're going to scrutinize whoever threw the game.
No, of course.
And I think, what's interesting is, with Devin Williams, I mean, you're right. You come from Milwaukee, but there's been a lot of people that have come from small market teams, so the large markets of the Yankees, that have defied the odds of the small market to big market idea. And not even just the Yankees, but have gone from small markets to big markets and, made names for themselves. Most notably, a guy that came from the Milwaukee Brewers as well, and previously another smaller small market team, bigger than Milwaukee, but came from Cleveland, with CC Sabathia. Sabathia came over, had no problem with the lights. You got guys like a David Wells who came over. Last night being the 25th anniversary of his perfect game for David Wells, came from small market teams, came in New York and made a name for himself. And we've seen a lot of players do that. So it's, I think also when you come to the closing portion of the Yankees, it's a little tougher because, again, no matter how many years it's been, you're still following Mariano Rivera.
True. Very true. There's always a big shadow, especially for a closer in Yankee Stadium. And I think when it's all said and done, on the flip side of it, for Edwin Diaz, that's going to be big shoes to fill as well, whoever, when it's all said and done. So, but I as far as this weekend goes, I love the games. The first game wasn't as close, but it's very entertaining. The second game was entertaining. That was what you expect out of the Yankees and the Mets. And now this third game, the rubber match, I'm currently not watching because I'm in a different room, but I would assume that it's just as entertaining as game 2. This whole Rivals week has been entertaining. I mean, Paul Skeens on today.
Yeah,
Paul Skeens with 9 strikeouts.
On a side note, I actually like this idea of Rivals Week. You get a weekend where the Orioles are playing the Nationals, the Guardians, they're playing the Reds. Like you have all this interstate brouhaha, Angels and Dodgers going at it. Like I love the idea of rivalry weekend.
I agree. I feel like they should do more of this because for anybody who's watching or listening or you guys here, NBA does this. NBA has a specific week for rivals. The Knicks play the Brooklyn Nets, the Lakers play the Clippers. So I like this as well because you get these, like you said, these interstate matchups or the interstate matchups where it's like another team is maybe 45 minutes away, that normally don't play each other.
Well,
so I would like to see more of this.
They're bringing it back. 4th of July weekend is the last. They're going to do two a year. So this weekend, 4th of July weekend, will be the next rivalry weekend.
Okay, I agree with that. I feel like they should keep it just like that. Do it 2 times out of the year, especially during the start of summer and the peak of summer, and that's smart. So, good job on the MLB for that.
I think it is smart. I mean, this is the one thing when you talk about, especially when you talk about like Yankees, Mets, when you talk about like Pirates, Phillies, when you talk about things like forgetting here, A's and Giants, when you're talking about Cubs and White Sox, when you talk about those interleague matchups, especially those rivalry teams, that's really what pushes the attendance. It's going to get people talking. And that's what you want to see. Now, what you don't want to see, and going here into our Around the League news and notes, what you don't want to see is 3 managers already fired within the first 50 games of this major league season. The most recent one being the recent firing of Brandon Hyde, the manager of the Baltimore Orioles. Orioles have started 15-28, expected to be in contention this year, but fired at 15-28. Prior to him, Bud Black, just a week ago, last Sunday, of the Colorado Rockies, fired after multiple seasons with the Rockies. And earlier this season, 28 games into the season, the Pirates fired Derek Shelton after they started 12-26. Were you surprised by any 3 of these firings?
I'm surprised that Colorado didn't fire Bud earlier. Okay. I think that's what I'm more surprised about. Baltimore, I agree with you. Baltimore, they were supposed to be in contention. I think when we started this, we spoke highly of Baltimore this season being right behind Boston. But now we're seeing it's pretty much more of the same thing from last year. The Yankees are just running. Well, I'm not going to say running away, but it's theirs to lose. So I can understand the Baltimore firing. The A's, I understand it, but do we really expect anything from the A's this season? I mean the Pirates. Pirates, excuse me. Okay, so yeah, I can see the Pirates. I can see that
Pirates
because
Pirates are now 15-32. They've only won. They've gone 3-4 since their manager was fired. The Rockies are 8-38, far and away the worst team in the National League, if not the entire Major League Baseball. But Baltimore 15-30 in dead last in the AL East.
I think that's the more shocking. The shocking one is, well, overall, I'm not going to say the firing, but the team itself being Baltimore.
So here's my take on the 3 firings. I'm not surprised that Shelton and Black got canned. It's funny. Bud Black got canned the same day his team won a game, ironically, which I always find funny. But the day before he got fired, the Rockies lost 21-0 to the Padres, which was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And his general manager, the kiss of death that day, said he actually had the vote of confidence.
Yes, the general manager said that's our manager. He backed him, and they clipped him anyway. I am surprised with Brandon Hyde only because this is the first time since he's managed the Orioles that they've been in a tailspin. So I'm surprised management didn't give him a chance to work his way out of the situation. Like you look at Bud Black. Bud Black was the manager of the Rockies for 10 years. You look at Derek Shelton. Derek Shelton's been the manager of the Pirates, I think, for the last 5 or 6. Granted, I think if Paul Skeens would have been pitching better than his record indicates, he would have saved his job a little bit. But Skeens is suffering from a sophomore slump almost. But no, Brandon Hyde really, really surprised me. And I'm surprised with the additions they made. Yes, they lost Anthony Santander, but you gained Tyler O'Neill. Like, you gained pieces. And you lost Corbin Burns. You didn't replace him with anybody. That's more on the front office than the manager. But for guys like Rushman and Gunnar Henderson, of all people, to be in season-long slumps is just crazy to me. But it's a 162-game season. There's plenty of baseball left. They could have had time to turn it around. So I'm shocked they didn't let him try to figure his way out. It's like I equate it to like the girlfriend that leaves you at the first sign of trouble. Didn't
I
give you
agree.
a chance to figure it out.
I agree with you. I feel like because we've seen this. How many times have we seen this in baseball where a team is literally slumping? They're the favorites or whatever the case may be, and then they turn around here September, October, fighting for a wild card. So I agree with you. I feel like they should have gave him a chance to turn the season around. Now at the end of the season, if nothing turns around, I understand. Mid-season, not even mid-season, because we're not even halfway. But you know,
and how much of the job of development really falls on the manager anymore nowadays? Because you talk about Rushman, Henderson, all these guys in season-long slumps, Alphonse. But is that on the manager? How much of the young players' development, you talk about a Skeens in Pittsburgh, how much is a young player's development really tied to the manager anymore?
You can't tie it to the manager. The only thing the manager can do is put you in and out of the lineup. Realistically, your development should be handled in the farm system, because we all know minor league baseball is not about winning games. You don't see guys in AAA saying, "My dream is to win an international league championship." Like, they don't talk like that. The goal of the minors is to get guys prepped to be in the show. Once you get to the show, you should be deemed ready. There shouldn't be any more talk of development. Because what can the manager that's why we have hitting coaches, pitching coaches, catching instructors. The manager's job is to simply coach the game. It's not to make sure that you follow through properly on your swing, or that you choke up on the bat when you're in the box, or to work on your mechanics. That's why we have hitting coaches, bench coaches, pitching instructors. This is why we have a spring training. The manager is just there to make adjustments in the game and put the best lineup he can out on the field to win. I don't think the manager should be responsible for development.
But is that even the manager's job nowadays? We talk so much about analytics. We talk so much about these front office people whose job now it is to they put together these algorithms that say these people have to be in the lineup on this day against this pitcher in this situation. How much of both of you know what I do for a living. I work in education. I work as a classroom teacher, and we talk about this all the time. How much of the baseball manager's job, similar to teachers, is now just being a facilitator, just being the adult in the building that says, I'm here because you need me here. But is the manager really filling out the lineup cards anymore? Is the manager really making the substitutions? Is the manager really making the pitching changes anymore? How much of this is really falling on the major league manager?
So I think it comes down to this, and I think we're seeing this across all sports, not just baseball or basketball or anything. I think it all comes down to the front office. And the front office, they go out and get these phenomenal players. Let's for argument's sake, right? Let's take Paul Skeens for argument's sake. We know what Paul Skeens can do. I agree with Alphonse. He is in a sophomore slump. His games have been very much up and down. He had a great game today. But if he's that consistent, the front office is going to want to see him more. Now, whether or not the manager agrees that, hey, he should be out there, it's what the front office wants. And the front office has that scare tactic of, well, hey, if you don't do what we say, we can always replace you with somebody who's going to do what we say. So that's where that comes into play. The manager itself, no matter what you're talking about, if you're talking about a manager in baseball, a basketball coach, a football head coach, they're going to do what the front office wants, because the front office is going to do, one, what's going to put money in their pockets, two, what's going to bring eyes to the team, and three, what the fans want, because all three of that ties together. So I think that's where we're at now. It's more so the front office pulling the strings on and off the field more than the manager has an opportunity to, come up with a scheme to go ahead and, okay, we're playing this team today, so I need to break this guy in and this guy here and this guy here. Now, I'm not saying that the manager doesn't have doesn't have half say. He probably still fills out the card and the lineups and everything. But best believe the front office wants to see certain guys out there, especially if they're the ones that are producing on the field and we're bringing the fans to the stadiums.
Colin, what's your take on the role of the major league manager?
So I also think one thing we failed to mention that it just came to my mind, the manager is also the fire extinguisher. And we've seen many a times in the past, you get two guys on a team who may not get along, or there's some type of dispute amongst guys in the clubhouse, and the manager is the one who's got to put the fire out. The manager could also be a motivator. We saw, and I'm just aging myself here, but 1990, what happened? Lou Piniella punched Rob Dibble in the mouth, and they ended up winning the World Series that year. Yeah. So he punched his closer in the mouth. I
guarantee you, Lou Piniella would have been fired in 2025 had that happened.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, yes, that also would be true. But
human resources, we'd have a report. Lawsuit. Piniella would not have been hired anywhere.
But also look at Joe Torre. Joe Torre, I granted, he did also have a presence in the Mets in history, but prolific Yankee manager. He had to deal with so many egos and big attitudes and big name players, whether it's Jeter, A-Rod, and all these other guys, Clemens. You look at Billy Martin. Billy Martin was the Yankee manager during the most chaotic time to be a Yankee manager, having to deal with Thurman Munson and Reggie Jackson, who didn't get along. Yeah. And they won World Series. So, Tony La Russa.
You didn't have a bunch of, and excuse me while I date myself here in another sport, you didn't have a bunch of pencil neck geeks in the front office who thought they knew baseball and were sitting there with a pile of numbers saying, well, man, I think you should play this guy because he's got a 472 average against lefties who throw from a 744 arm slot, and this guy does that 96% of the time, so we should start this guy, and I'm going to go put my clip on now. That's what these analytics guys are. You got a bunch of scrubs who's got math degrees, and don't get me wrong, I'm a math teacher. I love you guys, but you got a bunch of guys with statistics degrees making baseball decisions. So what is the role? Yes, I do believe Billy Martin and Joe Torre and a guy that is a Mets legend, Bobby Valentine, and all these guys. They had a much bigger role in baseball. It's why they call guys like Tony La Russa a fossil nowadays, because La Russa doesn't fit the modern day baseball. He makes adjustments based on how the game is going. To pull the curtain back on the wrestling side of things. All three of us big fans of wrestling. He's very much the guy of we'll call it out there, kid. We'll call it in the ring.
And look at what La Russa had to deal with. He had to deal with three of the biggest egos in the '80s with McGuire, Canseco, and Ricky Henderson. So,
right. But he's able to put together a lineup card. He's able to pull a guy from the bullpen or be able to pull a guy, you're not starting this guy. Hey, he's good. Let him stay out there. 100 pitches. No, he's got one more in him. I'm going to let him throw 101. Nowadays, we've got guys that they could be throwing a perfect game with 76 pitches. And they're only allowed to throw 80 pitches in the game, so we're going to pull them.
it's like this, right? And this is how you know the front office pretty much controls everything here. You can have a manager, any manager, do the right thing from a baseball perspective, from a baseball fan. You can say, okay, I can see why this is happening, and then the next day he's fired. That's just what it is. He can pull his guy, like Pete said. We've seen like a Pedro Martinez or guys of this nature go up to almost 90 pitches where they haven't gone to their bullpen at all. They've stuck with their starter. Now you do that, and they're like, no, you have to pull this guy. He's at 85 pitches, pull him. He's at 70 pitches, pull him. We don't see guys even. I think that's pretty much a reach, but you don't see guys pitch more than 6 innings. At least for most teams, you'll see a middle reliever come in maybe in the 7th, as early as the top of the 5th. You'll see a reliever guy come in, depending on the game. But if you pull that guy too late, you're fired. If you pull him too early, you're fired. Because why? It all comes back to the front office wants what they want. And that's why there's no power within management, within any manager in baseball. You're there as a placeholder right now. That's why the old school managers, you don't see too many old school managers around the league. All the people that you would consider fossils or out of date are not considered for these jobs.
Yeah, Buck Showalter was the last one, and when
he was the last one, and you saw what happened. And
when the Mets got as soon as we got a new GM, he ran him right out of town.
And you saw what happened, because with Showalter, no pun intended, did not want to play ball. He did not want to do what the front office wanted him to do. He didn't agree with half of those things. Why? Because Showalter is an old school type of manager. He believes, okay, you guys do the front office stuff. I do the management things on the field. I know what's best here on the field. You guys are not here or traveling on the road with us. You're just doing the contract decisions. You're doing whatever else that needs to be done. But when I'm on the field, when I'm with the guys, when I'm in the clubhouse, this is my territory, and what I say goes. It's not like that anymore.
It's interesting because, and don't get me wrong, I mean, we can sit here, we can have an entire show talking about how what I'm about to mention killed this young kid's career, right? But you're never going to have, unfortunately, a manager, and the manager is Bruce Bochy in this case. You're never going to have a manager like Bruce Bochy who's going to have a pitcher like Tim Lincecum, okay, who's going to go out there and, 225 plus innings, right? 4 straight 200 inning seasons, 120 plus pitch outings. I mean, in 2008, the Giants won 72 games. He pitched 227 innings. This is a young man who, in his postseason debut, threw a complete game shutout in game 1 of the LDS and got 14 strikeouts, 8 shutout innings to clinch the World Series. I mean, again, yes, we can do an entire series, an entire show about how, the amount of workload that was probably put on Tim Lincecum with his body frame and his everything probably is what led to the decline of his career in a short, 7 to 10 year span. But we also, all three of us sat here and watched Tim Lincecum perform, one of the greatest pitchers of his generation. He will never make the Hall of Fame. His resume is too short, but when you think of how his numbers stack up against some of the greatest pitchers in all of baseball, he's one of only 2 pitchers, I think him and Sandy Koufax, I forget what the stat is, but to do a specific thing, pitching wise, but he'll never make the Hall of Fame because his career was so short. But again, there's something worth watching what we saw with Tim. We'll never see another pitcher like a Dontrell Willis where it was allowed to go 7, 8, 9 innings. We're just never going to see it. And so while, yes, I understand in the sense of the Colorado Rockies, I can understand firing Bud Black. This has been a historically bad team. But in terms of Shelton, in terms of Hyde, I mean, it's tough to justify their firings considering I don't know how much they contributed to what their players and team are going through. As much as Alphonse, as you said, especially with the Orioles, it's the front office. But the front office isn't going to fire themselves.
Nope.
Right.
Speaking of someone who should get fired, Jose Alvarado. Phillies reliever suspended 80 games by Major League Baseball for violating the Major League Baseball's drug policy. He will be ineligible for the postseason this year. He tested positive for exogenesis testosterone, which is listed as a performance-enhancing substance by Major League Baseball. Phillies president of baseball operations, Dave Dombrowski, said the positive test was caused by a weight loss drug that Alvarado took during the off season. Yeah, 7 saves this season, 4-1 with a 2.70 ERA in 20 innings. My question is, why does anyone think they can take anything anymore? And how long do we have to go when we get past the excuse of just like anything you are taking, medicinal, non-medicinal? I bought candy from the local bodega. Run it by Major League Baseball first. I went back to the DR and I bought a soda. Run it by Major League Baseball first.
Well, I think what hurts the Phillies more is that they didn't just lose any reliever. They lost the closer, which, the closer is supposed to be the best arm in your pen. You lose your closer, like, may God help you the rest of the way. The Phillies already underperforming because everybody expected them to lead the NL East from pillar to post from game 1 to game 162. And, they have a prolific offense, but their pen has always been an issue. I always find it funny, just like what you said, run it by MLB. We saw it when A-Rod got busted for PEDs back in the day. He said, oh, somebody put something in his drink. We've seen many guys get suspended. They said, oh, they used the topical cream. They didn't know the ingredients. Like, at some point, I'm pretty sure these players get a manual. I'm not sure if they read this manual, but I'm pretty sure that they get some type of literature telling them what they can and cannot use.
I'm glad you cleared that up for a minute because I know manual. I know manual. Manual is my next door neighbor.
No, but I'm pretty sure they get some type of literature telling them what the banned substances are. There's no way that a league can have banned anything and not put it in writing.
But when you're making these many millions of dollars, Grizz, right? Don't you have people on your team who are supposed to like watch out for these things, who should be able to like run everything that you get through, as Fawn said, the manual?
Yeah. Again, we'll use another wrestling analogy. That's where the vets come in, And even if you are a vet, you should know better. You know what I mean? So I know there's a lot of new substances. Everything has a funky name. Everything has, different meanings to it. But the formula doesn't change, right? So you know what's in these things that you're taking. You know what's in these performance enhancing drugs. You know what's in these drugs that you're taking, whether it be to perform on the field, whether it be anything. You know what the substances are that you're putting into your body. And this is not even a baseball thing. Let's talk human thing here. You know what you're putting or what you're consuming into your body every single day. We're aware of what goes into our body. We eat every day. We drink every day. We know what we're putting in our body. So you cannot tell me as a professional athlete, you don't know what you're putting into your body because you know the health risk of it. You know the positives of it and you know the negatives of it. You know the positive, you'll perform on the field better. You might physically look better. You might physically feel better. The negative, this is the negative. You get suspended because we saw this with who did we see this with that got suspended not too long ago?
Jerickson Profar.
We saw it with Profar. Profar's won earlier. And we also saw it with I'm drawing a blank. San Diego Padres. Tatis. There we go. We saw it with Tatis Jr. He said the same thing. He didn't know what he was taking. And it's just at this point, again, as a human, not as an athlete, not as anything else, you know what you're consuming into your body. So how do you not know that these things that you're putting into your body are not legal? You know this. I agree with you, Alphonse. There should be a manifest or a manual that says, hey, this is what we're going to test for this every month or however much they get tested.
And you know what comes to mind? You know what comes to mind, Grizz? The fact that he said it was a weight loss supplement, right?
Mm-hmm. That he took last summer.
If this is a weight loss supplement, he was trying to lose weight. I don't buy that story because anybody who knows professional athletes, these teams get personal chefs. They get diet and nutrition coaches.
Yep.
So why do you need a supplement if the team gets personal? Each player on the team gets personal meals catered to their goals, and you get supplied a nutritionist and a dietary coach.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the need for a supplement unless you were cheating on the diet they gave you?
Pero, yo quiero comer arepa. Yo como mucho arepa aquí.
He couldn't put the pernil down.
He couldn't put the arepas down. Here's the thing, right? Like, and again, all three of us have been around, the world of professional wrestling, especially the world of independent wrestling.
Yep.
I know guys who have been wearing the same sneakers for 4 years in independent wrestling, but have a notebook where they track their macros and they track every piece of food that goes into their body, that will sit there and they have detailed notes on everything that they eat. Oh, I can't eat this. I can't. My wife goes to the stores and she picks up, oh no, this got this something gum in it. We're not buying this. Or this got the red 40. We're not buying this. That woman can sense an additive in a food from a mile away. And as you said, Grizz, these guys have teams. They are paid millions and millions of dollars and have teams. Alphonse, you said, through the team themselves. They have all these things supplied to them. You're telling me that you don't have somebody who can track A, B, C, X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, because like I said, it at that point of the argument, it's no longer a sports thing. It's a human thing. You know what you're consuming into your body daily. We all do. We all know what we're putting in our body. We all know what the effects of anything that we put into our body. I'll take it a step further. For those that indulge in whether it be weed or whatever choice of drug that you do, or substance, let's put it like that. You know the effects and how it makes you feel when you do it. You know that it's going to show up. It's the equivalent of, you have a job interview coming up, and throughout the past 2-3 months while you're looking for a job, all you've been doing is smoking weed. You know it's going to show up in your urine. Now you're struggling at the last minute to chug down a bottle of a jug of water and some apple juice and some cranberry juice to flush out your system. You know what you're consuming on a daily basis. Now, I don't buy that story either, because if you took it last year. No, you've been taking it since last year, and you've been consistently taking it. Because if you took it one time last year or 2 times last year or whatever, by this time this year, that substance is flushed out your system. You've been consistently taking this. Now, have you been using it as a way to lose weight? Maybe. Have you been using it for a different reason? More than likely you have. But either way, you got caught. You got caught doing this, and now your team is paying the price for it.
Yeah. And you talk about all these different excuses, all these different things, these different weight loss. Listen, you talked about. I remember there was a time where I was nervous to eat sesame chicken
Yeah.
and sesame seed bagels
It'll
because
show
I
up
was
as something.
told
Opiate.
it was so, there's opium in the seeds and it's going to show up if you got to do a piss test. It's got to do this. Come to find out, wrong seeds. It's poppy seeds, not the sesame seeds.
I'll take it a step further for those that grew up how I grew up. If you ever, especially me, because I was as all kids, we're all broke, we're all poor because we ain't got no money, we ain't got no job. But if you grew up in New York City, if you only had 50 cents, you got the 50-cent sodas.
Yep.
And what was the thing that our friends always told us when we got the 50-cent sodas? Oh man, you're gonna kill your sperm. You're gonna kill your sperm with the 50-cent sodas. And that's a myth. It's a myth, and you used to get made fun of for even going to pick it up. So, it's the same thing with the whole sesame seed thing. It's the same thing with the poppy seed thing. But this is something to where you knew what you were putting in your body. You knew the simple effects. It's not like you don't have a nutritionist, like Alphonse said. It's not like you don't have someone to tell you, hey, this is what this substance has. Somebody has had to tell you that this particular weight loss drug or this particular thing has this particular substance that's illegal, and somebody had to have told you. There's no excuse for that.
Yep. But speaking of no excuse, let's go to our last and final topic of the night. As of just a week ago, I want to hear, what is the excuse now to not have a Hall of Roses? Ladies and gentlemen, Rob Manfred, Major League Baseball commissioner, this week made a huge statement, removing from the exemption list, removing from the ban list, most notably Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson, the members of the Black Sox that were involved in the 1919 World Series scandal. But the big name, Pete Rose, being removed, Manfred stated, and I quote, "I do not believe that," let me actually get this up here again, that he said, I want to make sure. "Obviously, a person no longer with us cannot represent a threat to the integrity of the game. Moreover, it is hard to conceive of a penalty that has more deterrent effect than one that lasts a lifetime with no reprieve. Therefore, I have concluded that permanent ineligibility ends upon the passing of the disciplined individual," which means Pete Rose, finally, for the first time, is eligible for the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Now, that does not mean that he will immediately get in. He would still have to be voted in. It's going to be a little bit different, though. More than likely would be eligible by 2028 because he would have to go in front of the Classic Baseball Era Committee, which will next meet in December of 2027, which means the first time Pete Rose could be inducted is the summer of 2028. He would have to get 12 of the 16 votes to win induction. Now, for those of you who do not know of Pete Rose statistics, this is the man who is lifetime batting average of .303, Major League Baseball's career hits leader with 4,256, leads Major League Baseball in games played, at bats, singles, and outs. 3 World Series, 2 with the Reds, 1 with the Philadelphia Phillies, has won more regular season games than any other Major League Baseball player or any professional athlete in history, a total of 1,972. He won 3 batting titles, 2 gold clubs, an MVP award, and a Rookie of the Year. So tell me, gentlemen, do you think Pete Rose is eligible for the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%.
Do you think First off, A, do you think that Manfred made the right decision in clearing and removing from the permanently ineligible list Pete Rose and, by extension, Shoeless Joe and the Chicago Black Sox? And do you think Pete Rose deserves to go into the Hall of Fame, and will he get in? I'm going to go and start with Mr. Stevens. What say you, sir?
So this is going to be a long-winded response, and pardon my outrage, because as much as I love baseball, I feel like baseball is what I like to call the goody two-shoes sport. As long as you do right by the game and right by the league, you'll be taken care of. But they got it wrong twice. I'll tell you why. So Rob Manfred said that lifetime bans end upon your death, right? Shoeless Joe Jackson died in 1951. It is now 2025. So that man should have been eligible a very long time ago. On top of that, by the way, Mets Yankees tied at 2, by the way. If you have to look at the complexities of these cases, right? So for those people who don't know, Shoeless Joe Jackson was a part of the Chicago White Sox team that went to the World Series in 1919, and they lost to the Cincinnati Reds. They were accused of throwing the game because the mafia paid them to lose intentionally. Now, the case went to trial. Shoeless Joe Jackson was acquitted of all charges. The other 8 teammates, because there were 9 of them that were accused of throwing the series, the other 8 who confessed and said, yeah, we did it, also said that no, Shoeless Joe had nothing to do with it. You also want to look at the statistics, right? Up until that point, nobody had as many base hits in a World Series as Shoeless Joe did. He had the record at 12 broken in that World Series. Is a player who is trying to give the game away going to break records in a series in which he's trying to intentionally lose? I don't think so. A lot of people
also had the only home run of that series.
The only home run of that series, and he also had an outfield assist where he threw out a runner at the plate from the outfield, the only outfield assist of that series as well. So I don't think a guy who is trying to lose on purpose would do such a thing. Also, it's on record that he tried to meet with the owner of the team at the time, Charles Comiskey, to try to tell him what was going on, and Comiskey would not try to hear any of it. That's number one. Number two, we go to Pete Rose. It was proven. Now, granted, I get it. Baseball punishes people that lie. Pete Rose, for many years after he was caught to have done what he did, still denied it for decades. He got in the WWE Hall of Fame and still is not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. But anyway, Pete Rose, it was proven once the research came out that he only bet on games when he was a manager of the Reds, and he only ever bet on the Reds to win. He never bet on himself. He never bet on his team to lose. Meaning, if I'm managing a team and I put a bet on my team to win, that means I am not throwing the game. I'm doing everything possible in my power to win the game so I can win the money, right? So I don't understand how that's wrong. The other thing is, granted, you want to keep him ineligible. I get that. But the minute that MLB started going in bed with FanDuel and DraftKings and BetMGM and all these other sports books, that should have been the time that Pete Rose was deemed eligible again. Because how can you as a league partner up with gambling, but you're punishing a man for the same thing that you want your fans to do? Gamble. It's hypocrisy at its finest. Mind you, the man wrote a book. He came clean in the book. What more do you want him to do? He said, all right, I did it. And still, they would not reinstate him because they said he was still an active gambler on baseball. But how many commercials do you see in an MLB game? This is brought to you. Even replays, Pete and Grizz. Replays brought to you by DraftKings. Yep. You watch MLB tonight on MLB Network. They're going over the games that happened earlier today, showing you highlights, and it's brought to you by BetMGM. And I'll even go further. FanDuel has a sports TV network in some markets. And FanDuel Sports broadcasts in some of these smaller markets. They broadcast Cincinnati Reds games. They broadcast Minnesota Twins games. So you're partnering with the same people that you suspended the man for dealing with. It does not.
Yes, but Rose at that time, granted, things like FanDuel and BetMGM, you had numbers runners. You had these illegal guys who would sit on the corner and say, "Hey, take your money over here. You know what the action going over here? All right, $10,000, I'll take it. You don't pay me by Tuesday, lefty over here breaks your kneecaps." You know, it was a little bit different back then than it is now. When when Grizz is getting his parlay busted.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, I get it. There was no FanDuel, DraftKings back then, whatever. But the league is sponsored by gambling now. Mm-hmm. Sports gambling is big business for Major League Baseball. So how can you enter an enterprise, but you punish your participants for entering that same enterprise? Now, granted, again, if Pete Rose would have bet against himself and threw games and won money, different story. The man was only betting on himself to succeed. So it's not like he was throwing games. So it's just crazy. And then, the man right before he died, and we've seen this well, maybe not in basketball or football, but we've seen it in wrestling. You get a guy who knows he's about to die or is not in the best health, and he goes on this public campaign tour and is like, please, 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 just let me in. I just want to be able to live to see my induction day. And what happens? They don't let him in. And then all of a sudden, here he comes after he dies, now being inducted into the next class of the Hall of Fame. And why is that, Pete? You know why? Because now they can sell replica jerseys. They could put him in the Topps trading card set. They could make bobbleheads and all.
And he can't profit off of it.
And he cannot profit off of it, but the league will profit off of it. So, and then, matter of fact, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I have a replica Mitchell and Ness Pete Rose jersey from his Reds days. So the Reds and MLB were able to profit, but Rose couldn't. And while he was alive, and now they're sticking it to him again after he dies. Because I guarantee you, if he does get in, if they put him in, you'll see all this Pete Rose memorabilia, and they know that it'll sell because Pete Rose had many supporters even before he died, and it's just going to be a shame because they're going to monetize his likeness, they're going to profit off of it, and he won't even be. He lived his lifetime. He lived his lifetime realizing that he would never see the day that he would get in, and it's sad.
There are more people in our generation that know Pete Rose for being tombstoned 3 different times by Kane.
Yep.
Than they do his baseball exploits.
Yep.
And it's sad, really sad.
Grizz, what's your take on the reinstatements?
So Alphonse said something very interesting, right? That MLB can now profit off of Pete Rose's, pretty much his popularity. And this is something that people have been called for years. We could go back 20, 30 years. People have always called for Pete Rose to be in the Hall of Fame. It's been something that people have been wanting to see. Some people call it a crime that he's not in the Hall of Fame. But it's funny now, all of a sudden in 2025, it's like, okay, we can forgive you. And Alphonse brought up 2 things that are very interesting. One, they're going to be able to profit off of this because what's going to happen now is merch is going to get released. Alphonse, that jersey you have is now going to be worth 3 times what it is currently, maybe 4 times. The next thing after that, the Cincinnati Reds already, I believe in one of their games they recently had, they had a Pete Rose night. Like, I think
it was literally
the day after he was deemed eligible.
Right. The day after. So it's like now all of a sudden this is like, this is celebrated. And I'm not saying that Pete Rose shouldn't be celebrated, but it's unfortunate that the man is no longer here with us and he cannot profit off of anything that the MLB is doing. I don't know if the family of Pete Rose can profit off of anything that he's doing, but it's like, okay, you're using my name, you're using my greatness and all of this for what? Because you're getting something out of it. And then the third thing that Alphonse said was interesting, and I agree with, you guys know I'm a huge prize pick guy. Baseball, across all sports, betting now is not so far. I'm not gonna say far fetched. It's not frowned upon anymore. It used to be frowned upon 10 years ago. That you would say, and it's crazy to say 10 years ago. It was 10 years ago. It was 2015. But it's so frowned upon to sit here and say
it was still
I'm
illegal
bet
in
on
New
the
York
game.
at that time.
Yeah, it was illegal almost everywhere besides Vegas. It was
And
almost,
then I remember when they legalized it in Jersey. If you lived in New York, you literally had to.
you had to go to Jersey. But see, it was
Drive to the
perfect.
GW Bridge, go halfway over the GW,
Mhm.
make a bet in Jersey because it would GPS you,
Yep.
and then they would come. So I know people would take their bike, they put it in their car, they drive their car to the entrance of the GWB over in Washington Heights. They would take their bike, go over the GWB about halfway until the GPS said they were in Jersey, make a sports bet, get back in
And
their
turn
bike,
back.
drive back to their car, and then go home.
Yeah. And you know, kind of on topic but off topic, but that was smart because Atlantic City is there, and Atlantic City is pretty much the almost Vegas East Coast, so it's like all the betting is there. But going back to Pete Rose, yeah, the man was busted for betting. He betted on himself. I understand that, but you also had guys like different sport, but you had guys like a Michael Jordan who was taking bets. And that's not frowned upon. Allegedly, yeah, allegedly. Let's throw that on there. Allegedly, taking bets. This is not something that's now I can say far fetched. It's not something that's far fetched for an athlete to make bets on anything. And now in 2025, going into 2026, where betting now is promoted everywhere. It's promoted everywhere. There are podcasts that are sponsored by betting. There's sports sponsored by betting. I'm surprised that there's not a team because, like, how we see in the NBA, they have the sponsorships. I'm surprised any of the sponsorships are not sports betting places. They're not sponsoring a team.
And radio shows about
they have
sports betting.
You watch the pregame shows. They have the analysts literally telling you, bet on this person tonight. This is the person that's going to go over 21.5 points, or judge is going to get good for two home runs.
How many times in the middle of a game they'll tell you, all right, here's a look at the live line.
Right. They'll encourage people.
We are more than happy. The Dog Days of Baseball is more than happy to be sponsored by the betting service. If you want to sponsor Dog Days, we are more than happy.
We're not frowning upon the sports betting companies. We're frowning upon the MLB capitalizing off of them. That's what I'm frowning upon. Because you have
not wanting an active player involved.
Right.
We've seen it already. We saw it in the NBA earlier this year. A couple of guys getting popped trying to fix things. I can understand having rules in place where it's like, hey, while you are an active athlete, injured, non-injured, whatever, you cannot be active in sports betting within the sport that you play for. Now, I don't feel like there should be any reason why, for example, if you're a Major League Baseball player and you want to bet on an NBA game, or you want to bet on an NFL game, or you want to bet on an NHL game, I don't think there should be restrictions there, right? But I think if you're an active Major League Baseball player, you should not be allowed to bet on Major League Baseball in any capacity at all. And I think that should be a rule for every sport. I don't think you should outlaw betting altogether because, again, people can be fans of other sports and things like that. But I can understand all of that. I can understand you telling people if you are involved in betting, right, in any sort of way, you cannot be involved through any sort of illegal means, right? It needs to be through a legal thing, right? It needs to be through a FanDuel, a DraftKings, an MGM, a 360 bet, or whatever. But we're seeing this stuff now where you've got guys like, I think where you say gambling, it's tough because this isn't also the 60s, right? Where you've got guys in the back cigar rooms, right? Where you've got guys placing illegal bets, where you got guys going. I mean, growing up in the early 90s, I remember seeing OTBs packed.
Yep.
Track betting, yeah.
Huge.
You know, seeing OTBs packed with guys. Okay, this isn't like the early 90s, late 80s, where guys are putting their life savings on a horse to win the third race next Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can understand wanting to put those safeguards in place. But as you both have said, once you get into bed with the very thing that you said is your biggest demon, it would be like Major League Baseball, a team in Major League Baseball having a sponsorship agreement with Balco.
Yeah.
And then saying, oh, but this guy cannot go into the Hall of Fame because they use performance-enhancing drugs. It's why it makes no sense to me why we have guys who are popped for, drug use, but will sit here and celebrate Doc Ellis.
Yeah.
Why we will sit here and say, oh, and we want to talk about unsavory characters. I guarantee you, if we really comb through the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, there are a bunch of people that probably violate the morality clause of whatever.
Roberto Alomar is the biggest face of that.
So here's the question. None of us got to answer, which is fine. Do you think, a question in two parts.
Okay.
Do you think Pete Rose gets into the Hall of Fame? And do you think it happens immediately, or do you think they make him wait? Chris, we'll start with you.
I want to say it happens immediately, only because of the profit that they'll get out of it. And everything is money. Everything's money. No matter what you do in any sport, in anything, we just talked about management, right? Front office. Everything's money. So if they're going to profit off of this, if they're going to get, some of the old timer baseball fans to buy these things again, and Pete Rose is not so. Since we're using a lot of wrestling analogies on here, another person that's kind of like banned, nobody talks about, is like Chris Benoit. We all know why. That's sort of like what Pete Rose was. Pete Rose was that treatment. It was that name you don't speak. Now we can speak it. Does he get in immediately? No, I don't think he gets in immediately. I think he gets in unanimously, though. I do think he gets in unanimously. Immediately.
So you think all 16 members of the Veterans Committee put him in?
All 16. I think unless we have a Jeter Ichiro situation where it's one person that's like, no, that's the only scenario I can see. I don't see why it's not unanimous. But I would say, you said as early as next year?
2027 would be the first year.
First year?
Well, 2028 would be the first year he can get in. December 2027 is when that specific Veterans Committee would meet to come up with new names for their side of the ballot.
So I think his name would be at the top of the list at ASAP. I think his name would be at the top of the list for sure. And it does become an immediate thing. So I'll change my answer on that. It's immediate, unanimous, for sure. Because they're going to be able to profit.
I think he gets in because, I think that there's going to be public outrage if he doesn't get in his first year eligibility. Because when you have a guy with the stat line and the accolades of Pete Rose, especially several records that'll never be broken, I don't think. and especially the way the game is played and managed today, it would be criminal to not put him in. That's number one. Number two, like I said, they want to make the money. Baseball Hall of Fame is gonna make the money because those tickets sold to the induction, people are gonna want to go see that live. Again, the bobbleheads, the trading cards, the jerseys, even they'll probably even make like plaques where of signature moments he had. Like granted, I'm pretty sure with all the autograph signings he did in his lifetime, there are probably some autographs sitting in a storage unit somewhere that are going to be plastered onto memorabilia that they're going to create of his. So there's
And
a
unfortunately, they'll never say Pete Rose Hall of Fame. He was never been able to in his life sign Hall of Fame underneath his name.
No, but his signature will still be there, and they'll plaster that stuff all over the place. There's going to be a big market for them to monetize Pete Rose. I don't think Shoeless Joe will get in just because the majority of casual fans don't know who he is, but Rose will get in the first shot. I almost guarantee it. And Grant, they're going to want to put him in MLB The Show, the video game. Like there's so much they can do with Pete Rose. So I think he's going to get it.
I think and it's funny you say that because we all play the show. There's always like a big showcase. I think last year was the Jeter showcase. You don't think there's going to be a Pete Rose showcase? You don't think that they'll make that, or they'll have like Pete Rose moments? Absolutely. Look at all the legends they just added in the game. A notable person that hasn't been in the MLB The Show, which is Manny Ramirez.
Put him in this
just now put him in this game this year. How many games have we had? And Manny Ramirez has not been in those games. I mean, he was there as an active player,
but not as a legend.
That shows you right there. Everything comes down to profit. And they're going to profit off of that. And I do agree with Alphonse. There's going to be a lot of outrage. And now that it's public and it's out there that he's eligible, there's going to be fans that are going to express themselves. And in the day and age that we live in now, where social media and analytics of social media means so much across the board in all aspects of life, people are going to want to call for the front office to get fired. I'm not going to come to the Cincinnati games. I'm not going to support this. I'm not going to support that until we get what we want. And that's where it comes back to money, because if you hurt the pockets, they're gonna have to fold eventually.
Yeah, well, very, very well said. And not just the Reds, because Rob Manfred, the commissioner, he's already been criticized for changes he's made, the way he's spoken about baseball. It's all going to come back to him, and people are going to, you up, like Riz said, is all you upset the people that are going to make you the dollars. Something is going to have to change.
Exactly. You have people
can't alienate the consumer.
Yeah, you got people that spend 500, 600, 700, 800, as far as going into the thousands, just to be in a stadium for a few hours. You have loyal people that do this on a regular basis, and then you're going to lose those people if you're saying, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this right away. And you made it public. You didn't. Now, me personally, I don't think I would have made it public unless I have the intention on putting him in immediately. I think that's when you make it public. If they could have waited 2 more years and did it then cool. Or you could have did it next year. If you could have did it next year and make it public, because then for sure that you're going to put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. Because now if you don't do it, the outrage is going to be catastrophic, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's tough, especially it's not like he's a borderline guy either. It's not like Pete Rose was ever a borderline Hall of Famer. This was a man that I think everybody said from Jump Street, Yeah, I used to say for years, I used to say, you don't want to put him in as a manager because this all happened apparently when he was a manager. Fine. But there's no reason why he shouldn't be in as a player.
Agreed.
What he did as a player has to be separated from what he. Joe Torre will never go into the Hall of Fame as a player. But Joe Torre will go into the Hall of Fame as a manager. And there is a complete difference as to who those two entities are, right? When you talk about Billy Martin, the player, Billy Martin, the manager. When you talk about
Gil Hodges is another one. Never will get in as a player, but got in as a manager.
Right. Those are two completely separate entities. And what happens with someone as a manager is completely different from what happens with someone as a player. To me, Pete Rose as a player always deserved to be into the Hall of Fame. As a manager, did not deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And if you want to give the reason as because he bet on baseball while he was a manager. Okay, fine. But yeah, listen, I want to agree with both of you that Rose will get in his first shot. But there is something that tells me with how petty baseball is and how petty baseball is in. And when I talk about petty, we're talking about guys like Derek Jeter not getting in on a unanimous vote to the Hall of Fame. Makes no sense.
Ichiro not unanimous is crazy.
Ichiro, right, not getting in unanimously is absolutely. There is a level of pettiness in baseball, and this is a different level of voting, this Veterans Committee. It's not the sports writers. I believe this committee is made up of former players. This Veterans Committee specifically that Pete Rose would have to go through. I don't believe it's the sports writers, which is why I think they said that Pete Rose might actually get a little bit. It might be better for him to go through a Veterans Committee than through the regular Hall of Fame process because the sports writers might hold shit against them. But there's a level of pettiness that I worry about with Major League Baseball that makes me feel like somebody's gonna do something.
Yeah.
They'll still be able to profit off of Pete Rose stuff because you can still sell his jerseys, you can still sell his bobblehead, you can do all of that. But there's a level of pettiness that makes me worry about Pete Rose getting into the Hall of Fame. Before we sign off, as we said, we are recording this episode during the rubber game of the first half of the Yankee Mets Subway Series. Right now, bottom of the sixth inning, just ended. Well, just about to end. It is 2-2. Yankees and Mets tied. This might be the last inning for David Peterson. He's at 98 pitches. Max Fried, 8 strikeouts in his 6 innings of work. I wonder if they can let him come out for the 7th. But, gentlemen, before we sign off tonight, I want to take a moment to kind of just reflect on something that is ending this week. This 3-person situation, these multi-camera analyst kind of podcasts and shows and things like that really take a lot of its heat and its credence from a show that will, be airing for the last time in 23 years this upcoming Friday. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, at 5 o'clock p.m. on ESPN for the last 23 years, you saw a little show called Around the Horn. Started with the hosting by Max Kellerman and ending with Tony Reale, who was the second and final host of Around the Horn. You saw newspaper columnists from around the country debate on multiple topics over the course of the half an hour in a rather hilarious way. For the last time in 23 years, this Friday, May 23rd, will be the final episode of Around the Horn. And I just, I've watched Around the Horn since the Kellerman days. I saw when they moved from Kellerman to me. I remember Reale was just Stat Boy from Part of the Interruption. Which PTI, to me, the penultimate sports debate show with Kornheiser and Wilbon.
Also ending, by the way.
Which breaks my heart. But yeah, Around the Horn, ending 23 years on the air. I mean, names like J.A. Adonde, Tim Calishaw,
My personal favorite, Woody Page,
Woody Page,
Jackie McMullen,
Jackie McMullen, and I'm forgetting the other one from Boston, forgetting his name.
Bill
Off the
Plaschke.
top of my head. No, the Bill Plaschke, yes, but that's not the one I was thinking about.
Well, Jackie Mack was Boston. Kevin Blackiston was Washington, D.C.
Yep. And then, way back in the day when you really want to go back, you have here, see here. Clinton Yates, Frank Iasola, Tim Calishaw, Israel Gutierrez was on there for a long time. Mina Kimes really got a big start in the later years, and especially Monica McNutt. Ramona Shelburne was on there for a long time. But some of the older panelists, Jamel Hill, Bomani Jones, Jay Mariotti, unfortunately, screwed his life up, but Jay Mariotti, one of the original guys on that show, Gene Wojciechowski, people like that. And Bob Ryan. That's who I'm forgetting. Bob Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
An incredible show that just, when you think of a show being on for 23 years and to have the run that it's had is incredible. Tony Reale doing a great job on that show. I know I will definitely be I know I don't have the actual technology anymore, but I will be DVRing that final episode somehow, some way. But yeah, and then I didn't even know that PTI was ending.
Yeah, same day. This Friday's a wrap for Wilbon and Kornheiser.
Please tell me they're doing the final episode. Oh, no. Is it?
Let's see. I believe so, because it's the same production.
No, it says they're considering expanding it to an hour-long program. Don't you
Well, that's
don't
good
you
news.
mess me up here. I was about to say, don't you mess me up. But no, Around the Horn ending after 23 years. Want to give it its flowers. And as we said, recording during the rubber game of this series. Max Fried now out. Loizaga coming in, top of the seventh inning for the Yankees. I believe Peterson will be out for the Mets. It's down to the bullpen, gentlemen.
Yep.
It's down to the bullpen.
Well, we're getting exactly what we got last night, and this is what we love as baseball fans.
There you go. And your guy is up. Your guy's up. Alphonse Beatty's up.
He's not my guy, bro. For those of you who watch the Metropolitan Report, I want Brett Beatty off the team. If I'm Stearns, I'm flipping him for Luis Robert in July. So, as part of a package, that's what I'm doing.
Don't do it. That's your guy right there.
No, my guy is Pete Alonso, who they didn't want to pay, by the way, who they should pay now, but different story.
Well, we will see, gentlemen. We will see you in 2 weeks. The end of the month, we will be back with episode 4 of the Dog Days of Baseball podcast. For Grizz, for Alphonse Stevens, I'm the voice of Generation Pete Rosado. Happy baseball, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you in 2 weeks.